They say the devil hides in the details. But what if he hides in plain sight, with a coffee in one hand and a smile that never quite reaches his eyes? Tonight we walk alongside a ghost. Not the kind that rattles chains in abandoned homes, but the kind that books airline tickets, that pays in cash, that buries murder weapons before the crime is even imagined. This is not the story of a man who snapped. This is the story of a man who planned. For years. Quietly. Perfectly. Fade into soft white noise. Radio static, interspersed with the faint clinking of metal. In a small, silent town in Alaska, a young woman named Samantha Koenig vanished from her coffee kiosk one cold February night. Security footage showed a man, tall, calm, walk up to the window. He wasn't in a hurry. He wasn't angry, just still. Like he had all the time in the world. That man was Israel Keys. He didn't live nearby. He wasn't a regular customer. He had no connection to Samantha. And that was the first terrifying clue. Israel Keys did not kill for passion. He killed for practice. Cut 2, interrogation room audio. Keys breathing, calm, measured. I would go on trips just to hunt. No one specific, just whoever was there. We rewind. Way back. Before the media, before the mugshots, before the suicide, Israel Keys grew up in a Mormon family turned fundamentalist Christian. Isolated, homeschooled, raised off the grid in rural Washington. He built his first cabin as a child. He learned to shoot. He read survival manuals like fairy tales. But this isn't a story about religion, or trauma, or excuses. Because for all his upbringing, Israel Keys made a choice, a very specific one. He admired Ted Bundy, but thought Bundy was sloppy. You don't take victims near your home. You don't have a pattern. You don't keep souvenirs. That's how you get caught. He created what the FBI later called a new kind of monster. Not driven by rage, but calculation. While most of us planned vacations, Keys planned murders. And not in the way you'd think. He didn't stalk victims. He didn't search dating apps. He buried kits, all across the country. Home Depot buckets filled with zip ties, guns, silencers, cash, duct tape, and Drano. Buried deep in rural parks, forests, and abandoned lots. Some left untouched for years. I could go anywhere. Land in Chicago, rent a car, drive 500 miles, pick a random house, and be gone before sunrise. He did this, over and over. And that randomness? That's what terrified the FBI most. There was no pattern, no profile, no motive, nothing to trace. He flew under the radar, literally, paid in cash, turned off his phone, used back roads, slept in his car. 1 week, he'd be laying tile as a quiet handyman in Alaska. The next, he'd be driving through Vermont, looking for an empty house, and a reason to use what was in those buckets. Visuals, maps with pins, cross-country flights, hidden weapons rusting beneath the soil. Back to Samantha. Keys abducted her at gunpoint, kept her alive, took her debit card. Then, he did something almost theatrical. He posed her body, took a photo that made it look like she was still alive, sent it with a ransom note. Her family believed she was being held hostage. The truth was far darker. For weeks, he used her car to cross the Southwest. Police traced withdrawals but couldn't catch him. He wore disguises, switched cars. He was always a few steps ahead. Until Texas, a routine traffic stop, a small-town cop with good instincts, and a name no one recognized. Until they opened the trunk, cut to silence. Then, the slow ticking of a clock. How many people did you kill, Mr. Keys? I don't like to say, not because I'm afraid, but because I liked it. Low ambient hum. A plane engine fades in over a black screen. A map flickers slowly into view, its dotted red lines crawling across the continental US like veins. Each dot, a city, each line, a silent route of death. Narrator, calm, sharp, and unnervingly steady. Between 2001 and 2012, Israel Keyes didn't just travel. He stalked the spine of America. From the icy desolation of Alaska to the foggy coasts of Vermont, he wasn't running from anything. He was hunting. And the most terrifying part? The FBI doesn't even know how many bodies he left behind. He confessed to killing at least 11 people. But confessions mean little when there are no names, no specific dates, just fragments. Clues scattered like broken glass across the U.S., a frozen lake in New York, a dilapidated farmhouse in Vermont, a lonely ditch off a highway in rural Washington state. It wasn't about the person, it was about the process, the preparation, the act. To him, murder wasn't personal. It was a routine, an equation, a ritual that fed his need for power and silence. The person in front of him was irrelevant, disposable. He referred to his crimes as projects, cold, detached, organized, and he executed them with the precision of a surgeon and the patience of a predator. He didn't want to know his victims, didn't want to remember their voices, didn't even want to hear them beg. What he wanted was control, and for a decade, he had it. There were no fingerprints, no witnesses, no motives, no patterns. He was the nightmare every profiler fears. A killer without a signature, with no compulsion to be caught. He was the ghost in the system. Inside a sterile FBI interview room in Anchorage, Alaska, Keyes sat in a chair across from two seasoned agents. He wasn't handcuffed. He didn't need to be. He wasn't nervous. He didn't sweat. He just talked. He spoke with a quiet, unsettling confidence, describing bank robberies like weekend errands, murders like forgotten chores. Some of them I let go, others, I didn't feel like driving back. He smirked, sipped his water, tilted his head when asked about remorse. I have more regrets about my 401k than the people I killed. And that's when they knew. This wasn't about guilt. This was a man playing a game, and he was still trying to win. He began to tease, dropping crumbs, hints, a campground, a red barn, a woman with a dog. Nothing concrete, nothing that could close a case. It was as if he was enjoying watching them try to solve a puzzle with missing pieces, pieces he had no intention of giving away. He told them he wanted the death penalty, fast, quiet, clean. But the more they pressed, the more he recoiled, because there was still something he needed to protect. Back in Anchorage, a little girl waited for her father. Yes, Israel Keyes was a father, a partner, a man who painted his house in the summer, took his daughter sledding in the winter, attended school plays, smiled for family portraits. The man who tied people to trees and buried bodies like trash, also baked birthday cakes. Neighbors described him as courteous, private but helpful, a quiet man with a big truck and a friendly nod. One neighbor recalled, "He was the kind of guy you'd trust with your dog or your house keys." Never raised his voice, never seemed angry. But that calm exterior was a mask. Behind it was a system, a compartmentalized machine of blood and calculation. "I had rules," he told the FBI. "Never kill in my own state, never target children, never bring it home." But rules eventually break. Samantha Koenig was 18. She worked at a coffee kiosk. She smiled for customers, made tips, closed alone. One February night in 2012, she vanished. And for the first time, Keyes broke protocol. He took a victim in his own city, his own neighborhood. He left traces, a footprint, a security camera glitch, a timeline. The thread unraveled fast. The FBI began pulling, and underneath it all was a decade-long tapestry of horror. In his jail cell, Keyes drew maps, not detailed ones. No names, no streets, just marks, X's, dots. A mark in Wyoming, another near the Canadian border, one deep in a Texas field. He told them where he thought he left bodies, where he stashed kill kits, buckets filled with weapons, rope, tape, money, and disguises. He buried them years before using them. Some he never even returned for. Some are still out there, waiting, buried beneath forest floors, behind motels, under snow. "They'll only find what I let them find," he said. His voice never shook. To this day, some of his victims remain unknown, unidentified, their faces unlinked to their deaths, their stories unfinished. Families grieve in silence, not knowing the monster behind their pain had a name and a plan. He didn't kill because of trauma. He didn't kill because of obsession. He killed because he liked it. Fade to black, then static. Then the sound of metal striking earth, like a shovel scraping something buried just beneath the surface. Ambient drone. A single fluorescent light buzzes. We see faded crime scene photos, maps with red X's, and Key's emotionless eyes staring dead ahead. Narrator, low, deliberate. Israel Keyes never wanted fame. He didn't crave headlines. What he wanted was control, until the very end. After Samantha Koenig, everything unraveled. He broke his rules, abducting and murdering close to home. In a moment of arrogance or desperation, he left behind digital footprints, surveillance footage, a TM withdrawals, a ransom note. The FBI followed the trail, across state lines, through burner phones and rental cars. Every move Keyes made in secret suddenly became traceable. In Texas, he was finally caught. Calm, cooperative, as if he'd just been pulled over for a traffic violation. He didn't resist, he smiled, like he was watching a show he'd already seen 100 times. In over 40 hours of FBI tapes, Keyes played games. He offered breadcrumbs, partial confessions with glaring gaps, suggested murders in Oregon, Wyoming, New York, described his kill kits like tools in a craftsman's workshop: duct tape, Drano, ropes, silencers. Some of those kits were buried 10 years before he used them. Some he never got to dig up. He toyed with agents, refused to name his victims unless granted a quick execution. Every answer came with a condition. Every truth, a transaction. He wasn't remorseful, he was methodical. A man orchestrating his final performance. Inside his Anchorage jail cell, Keyes made one final decision. On the morning of December 2nd, 2012, guards found him dead. Blood on the walls, a razor hidden in a pencil. He slit his wrists and hung himself using bed sheets tied into a noose. But even in death, he left a riddle. On the floor beside him was a drawing, 11 skulls, and a pentagram. Below it, a cryptic suicide note. Part poem, part manifesto. He called himself a monster, wrote about shadows and blood, but never gave names, never closure. The FBI was left with maps, symbols, and a manila folder filled with secrets that died with him. To this day, Israel Keyes' full kill count remains unknown. Authorities believe there could be more than 11. Some say over 20. Others believe the number is far higher. His kill kits, some still buried, his maps, incomplete. His victims, unnamed. He was the perfect predator, not because he was smart, but because he was patient. He studied other serial killers, Bundy, BTK, Zodiac, not to copy them, but to be better than them. Quieter, invisible. He wanted to be a ghost, and in many ways, he succeeded. There is no final closure. Some families will never know what happened to their sons, daughters, or siblings. Some towns will never know they were haunted. And somewhere beneath the snow in rural America, tools wait, bones wait, stories wait to be unearthed. Israel Keyes is gone, but what he left behind is not dark screen, a slow zoom into the X's on a faded map. Then, static, a slow, pulsing heartbeat, fading. Israel Keyes was a ghost, a shadow moving through the cracks in society, unnoticed, unbothered. His legacy is one of silence, a silence that stretches like an endless void. You see, some killers are loud. They scream for attention. But Keyes? He wanted nothing but quiet. The kind of quiet where no one can hear you coming. Or going. A slow, heartbeat-like thud reverberates, like the ticking of an unseen clock. The camera zooms in on blurred, faded images of his various crime scenes, scattered photographs, hastily drawn maps, and places where innocent lives once stood. He never left a signature, no bloody mark, no grand statement, just a trail of ghosts. Bodies buried in places no one thought to look. His plans were methodical and hidden in plain sight. His victims mere blips in a much larger, darker picture. Some say he was a perfect predator. But the truth is, he was just a man. A man who knew how to blend in, how to wait, how to be forgotten. The screen fades briefly to black, with the faintest outline of a skull glowing in the distance. The screen flickers like a dying candle. What do we know about him, really? The questions remain unanswered, the stories incomplete. How many? Where? Why? The kill kits he buried years before, waiting to be discovered. How many victims will remain nameless? And which towns will never know they were touched by darkness? The camera focuses on a single object, a map with a red X, slowly being covered by layers of dust until it fades entirely into blackness. We may never know, because Keyes, in the end, wanted us to remember him only as a whisper, a flicker in the dark, a story without an ending. Dramatic pause. A deep, unsettling hum rises from the background. But the question remains, how many other whispers are out there, hiding just beneath the surface, waiting to rise? Screen cuts to black, then slowly fades into text. The faint crackling of an old radio plays in the background. Remember, in the darkness, some things are better left unseen. Sound of a door creaking open. A cold gust of wind. Static fades in. If you want to uncover more truths that others have buried, subscribe now. You won't find these stories anywhere else. You can't unsee what's been shown. Join the shadows. Dive deeper into dark files. Sound of a faint heartbeat. A single, slow breath.